Hey guys, happy week after Easter. We are continuing our journey through Genesis, and it really feels crazy how quickly we're going, honestly. And we're going slow, kind of, but also quick. It's also crazy to me that we're in the first week of April as I'm videoing this and recording this right now, and just wild to think about how fast time really does go. And this week we're in Genesis chapter 13, and there's an issue in Genesis 13, and the issue is both Abram and Lot have become so wealthy in regards to their possessions, their livestock, the people that are with them, all of these different things. They're expanding so much that they're going to have to split up because there's no one piece of land or one place or one town that is big enough for both of them. And so they decide, they make this decision that they're going to have to split up. Now, God, because God is a provider, has given them more than enough land. They're just going to have to split up and can't be together like they have been together. And we really see two different attitudes in regards to what happens with Abram and Lot here when they have to split up. We have one man, Abram, who, remember in Genesis 12, the last chapter, we talked about his faith journey. Man, he really trusted God when God said to go, and he went. But then also he got to Egypt and said, hey, tell them you're my sister because I'm scared they're going to kill me. Not trusting in God's provision and protection there. And is this land actually good? Is God going to provide for us in this land? All of those doubts and questions spring up. And so we see this faith journey of Abraham like a roller coaster, right? And we get to Genesis 13, and we see Abram is once again a man full of faith. He shows his faith and his trust in God by allowing Lot to choose. He says, here's the land. One of us has got to go this way. One of us has got to go this way. And he doesn't choose. He could have, right? He was older. He was the uncle. He was the one who was technically in charge, right? And could have, but he showed that he had trust and faith in God, right? To allow Lot to choose that God was going to take care of him no matter what. And because Abram had faith and trust in God, and because Abram was walking with God, he was able to be gracious and generous to his nephew. And I don't want us to miss this, because the reality is, for those of us who are walking with God, graciousness and generousness should be a characteristic that people see inside of us. We really have options when it comes to how we deal with possessions and things in this world. We can covet and we can be greedy, or we can trust in the promises of God, the abundance of God, and we can be generous. The reason that Abraham is not worried or anxious about any of this is because he's rich towards God, and that's what he has concerned himself with the things of God himself. We have a choice to make. We can either be self-seeking, self-serving, self-trusting, self-directed, or we can be God-seeking, God-serving, God-trusting, or God-directed. We have a choice that we can make. And so Abram makes the choice to treat his nephew as an equal, to put peace with his nephew above his own personal individual prosperity. He's willing to humble himself and is able to be genuine with his nephew because of his faith. Abram had faith, and faith pleases God. However, we see another man, Lot, who wanted to advantage himself. He wanted to choose the land that looked the best, the land that was going to serve him the best, the land that in his mind, because he was looking at it, was going to give him everything he needed. The problem was that he made a decision by sight. Abraham made a decision by faith. And we have a choice. We can either make decisions by faith or by sight. Faith is not having sight. It's making a decision without sight. That's what faith requires. And so Lot wants to advantage himself, but he ends up going east, which shows distance and exile from the divine presence. Anytime after the garden, right, going east is going out of the divine presence. And so Lot ends up removing himself from the divine presence, and he ends up positioning himself close to Sodom, which is a just morally corrupt and sinful place. And the reality for Lot is, when you position yourself close to people, close to sin, close to people who aren't walking with God, it can have devastating consequences for us. And so as believers, we need to be like Abram, not like Lot. We need to be willing to relinquish our rights in order to enrich other people, because we trust that God's going to provide for us. We don't have to be greedy or to grasp for possessions, because we're secure in God. We're to bring peace and reconciliation to relationships. Abram seeks the righteousness of God first and foremost, and everything else is added to him, just like Jesus said would happen in Matthew 6:33. If we humble ourselves, God promises us he'll take care of the exaltation. We don't have to exalt ourselves. Most of the time, submitting is way better than seizing and grasping for ourselves. So don't take the easy road. Be willing to patiently wait, because that is the key in some situations, because God's ways are higher than our ways. God's plan is best, but a lot of times it takes time and it requires sacrifice. Going slow is often very beautiful. But the problem is, in our culture and society today, we're impatient people. We got to be willing to be patient. We got to be willing to go slow and trust that God is faithful and he will keep his promises in his time and in his way. And so God promises once again, I'm going to give you all the lands you see. I'm going to make your offspring like the dust of the earth. It's going to be uncountable. And from Abram, when he didn't have a land and he didn't have a people and he had a wife that was barren, this takes faith for him to believe this. So what did Abram do as a result of all this? He builds an altar so he can worship. He has faith and he worships God, and those two things are the most important things to him. And as a result, everything else is given and added to him. So let's be people like Abram, who are willing to put others first, who are willing to trust in God and be gracious and generous, who are willing to not worry or be anxious because we trust in God, who are willing to be God-directed, God-seeking, God-serving, and God-trusting, not self-seeking, self-serving, self-trusting, or self-directed. Let's be people who relinquish our rights in order to enrich other people because we trust that God is going to provide for us. And so let's be people who trust. Let's be people who have faith, and let that dictate the way that we live on a daily basis like Abram did, and not try to advantage or exalt ourselves like Lot did. At the end, it goes way better for the people that let God do the exalting than those who try to exalt themselves. Those who humble themselves will be exalted. Those who exalt themselves will be humbled. We'll see you next week for Genesis 14.